Good morning, Ria. Good morning, Lagos. And good morning, Nigeria. It's another beautiful Wednesday morning here in the FCT, the nation's capital. And of course, we have our drums full with a lot to offer this morning. So sit tight and join the conversation.
Yeah, good morning, Nigeria. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning. And TJ, something happened yesterday, but that will be a conversation for another day.
Right.
Mathematics is no longer a compulsory subject for us today. I'm
Wow,
excited about
a beautiful
that
one.
for another day.
Well, good morning, everyone. And it's another beautiful day on FCT Brief, your daily window into the heart of the nation's capital and beyond. Today, we are shining the spotlight on a global conversation that hits close to home: the race towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and the renewed call for Africa to strengthen its commitment to sustainability and inclusive growth. As the world moves into the final stretch of the 2030 agenda, the federal government of Nigeria, alongside development partners, is intensifying calls for improved collaboration, investments, and innovation to fast-track progress on key SDG targets, from poverty eradication and quality education to climate action and clean energy. The message is clear: time is running out, and Africa cannot afford to be left behind. At several high-level forums and policy dialogues, stakeholders have expressed concerns that despite notable strides, many African countries, Nigeria inclusive, remains off track in meeting core development indicators.
Challenges such as our rising debt burdens, climate-induced disasters, and social inequalities continue to slow down progress, demanding a more coordinated, data-driven, and people-centered approach. In Nigeria, efforts are ongoing to align national development plans with the SDG framework as the government seeks stronger partnerships with the private sector, civil society, and international agencies to drive sustainability across all sectors. From green energy initiatives to food security programs and gender inclusion policies, the focus is shifting towards sustainable impact rather than short-term interventions. So this morning on FCT Brief, we will explore the urgency, the progress, and the promise as the world inches closer to 2030. What more can Africa do to meet the global sustainability agenda? And how is Nigeria positioning itself to lead from the front? Stay with us as the conversation begins with a special advisor to the President on National Economic Council and Climate Change, Ruqayyah Al-Rufai. And also joining the conversation is the country head, Nigeria of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, Thomas Isibor. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Let me start with you.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Let me start with you. 2030 is just about 5 years from now. And when you look at the 17 SDGs, would you say that as a country that we are right on track at meeting the SDG goals by 2030, and also the National Economic Council? What is the kind of advice you give to this council to help us accelerate our progress in attaining these goals?
Okay, a very important question, since it's our global development agenda. Sustainable development goals are our global sustainable agenda. And you can see that the whole world is actually behind. There was a voluntary review this year that was deliberated at the United Nations General Assembly. And for Nigeria, we're largely progressing on 35%. And some of the areas that are giving us challenges, like the goal on no poverty, you can see it in other measures, with our poverty index that was in the news recently. So I think it needs to be state-led and truly inculcated into the development plans nationally and by each state, because when you look at the goals, a lot of things are also on the concurrent list, like education, primary healthcare, and that's why National Economic Council is very important in helping us accelerate the last lap, what I would call the last lap. But this is the opportunity for Nigeria Our development plan expires this year and is going to be in alignment 2026 to 2030, in alignment with the final time we have to give it our best. And I do know that the council approved the new plan. I'm sure you saw it. It's going to be called the Renewed Hope Plan. And we're going to try and ensure that, all these frameworks feed into the plan, all these areas form the national priorities, so that we're not only accelerating on the areas of the goals that are nuanced to us, but we're also concentrating on those priority areas. And each goal has actually broken indicators and different areas. So that's what at the National Economic Council, there is a very important program which I coordinate, the Human Capital Development Program in Nigeria. And when you look at it, we've prioritized health and education and skills, labor force participation, and then there's some mainstream areas such as gender and vulnerable groups, food and nutrition, and so on. So we're actively advocating being impact-oriented, to make sure we are really looking at the data and we keep advocating to the MDAs and the states so that we progress.
Quite interesting that you've noted all this, but beyond the rhetoric of implementation, which of these specific SDGs would you say that Nigeria can realistically meet by 2030, and which one is out of reach at the moment?
So I will take the human capital perspective where we did check. Has any country made progress on education, health? Yes, Kenya actually improved in a very short time on some of it. And I think it's the political will, buoyant fiscal space, having an integrated financing framework, which is one of the key takeaways and areas that the government is trying to improve. But I think we can, of course, a lot of the areas have very long-term results framework. But I think the most important area that I think will have rippling impact on the others, education. I think, I don't see how we can achieve many other goals without tackling education. Of course, health too. Healthcare, tackling the out of school, even learning poverty. And you can see, you just spoke about it, math has been taken, updating the curriculum, ensuring what is taught is what society needs to create jobs, the skills element. So there are quick wins that I think if we selectively choose, especially when going into this national planning process, we can achieve, accelerated progress in the next 5 years.
Okay, let me come to you, Thomas. Let me say the private sector, man. Attaining SDG goals, it's the partnership between the public sector and the private sector. Now, let's take a look at what she just highlighted. She talked about education, health, and also added food security. Now, how is the private sector partnering to help ensure that by 2030, we can sit back and say we have achieved this much in education, this much in health, this much in food security? So what is organization like yours, the private sector, doing to help grow our pursuit?
Thank you very much for the question. My name is Isibor, and I work at ACCA. And ACCA is a global organization for professional accountants. And we have a strong commitment to the UN SDGs. And one of the things we have done is to design a sustainability hour program for all schools, secondary and primary schools. So the objective of it is actually to help educate, increase knowledge, understanding, and as well try and change behavior and also drive advocacy as well for the SDG. I think the importance of what we are bringing to the table is that we're making this investment of ourselves to ensure that Nigeria and, of course, future leaders around the world understand the concept of SDG and, of course, start living it as well. So it would take a look at quality education, just like Rukaya has mentioned specifically. What does it mean, for an example, for children in secondary school when we talk about quality education, and how can they become a part of it to actually implement? And it could be simple steps, really, that we need to bring awareness about. Yeah. So, for an example, if you're a young person and your parent buy textbooks for you, for an example, and you're aware that if you use it well, you can pass it on to another generation, probably another client who can be able to utilize it better. They may not be able to afford it, so it helps improve overall education and helps the government in itself to meet its own education objective. So those are the sort of support and partnership that private organizations, professional bodies, global organizations bring to the table to ensure that sustainability is not just a buzzword, but it's actually implemented, it's practical, and it goes deep down.
Academia is quite key, to this SDG, the implementation of these SDGs. But we'll talk more about that right after this short break. Don't go anywhere. There's still more on the program. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're glad to have you back. Now we're heading back into a conversation on how realistic it is for Nigeria to achieve the SDGs by 2030. Now, Mr. Isibor, universities are supposed to be the engine rooms of these innovations. But what specific role should African universities and Africa University and Research Institute play in driving measurable progress towards the SDGs?
I think that, and you're correct, the universities are very critical to delivering SDGs. I think one of the roles university can play are research that are very, country specific. Yeah, because every climate has its own challenges, so there needs to be more research. There also needs to be, more involvement in terms of execution on how, the SDGs. There needs to be more awareness from the universities around the importance, because that is the, highest institutions of learning. They also need to be more incorporation of the sustainability learning into our curriculum in the university to make it, more impactful. So for an example, I remember when I was in school, there was this subject they called GS that was compulsory. Everyone has to take it. So I think universities, we need to start that sort of engagement and be more deliberate about how we can impact society, because SDG, I think, is really for, everyone. So universities need to be much, much more intentional about how they support the delivery of SDGs.
Okay, Ruka, let me come back to you with this. We talked about the right education we need to give to our people, but when you talk about SDG and you want to interpret it to the ordinary man down there, to my mother in the village, for her to understand, we talk about SDG, a lot of people will think that these are elitist conversation, because our basic crisis is food security. Hunger is there, unemployment is there, health challenge is there. Now, how do we now take all these, even to the children in school, to interpret in the language they will understand that these are not elitist agenda. It is not a global agenda we're trying to pursue. We're just trying to use it to drive home our own goals. So how do we align this variation in your understanding? So
it's how you take it and take that local approach where you have a global agenda and you can localize it and interpret it in the layman. You just mentioned the basic needs of a human being. No hunger, there's zero hunger. The poverty one, it's there. So when you look at the goals, they are relatable. So it's how the local NGOs, the local actors, us as a government, And, you know, even the traditional systems, the traditional leadership systems, they play a key role. Because we sat and we were deliberating on vaccines, for example, and you know, the trusted messengers of some of these that speak the same, they understand how you know, the people generally would understand what each SDG means. And, you know, it's such a cleverly crafted goal that a government can modify and adapt, a corporate can modify and adapt. In fact, I've seen a framework where, you know, you can personally translate it, the good life goals. Someone did it. So you as an individual, on each goal, you can actually take action in your personal life, you know. So I see it as a very, you know, easy thing to do that is even done, because when you look at even when Onga happens and the local champions, for example, I know His Royal Highness Serki Sanusulami, he is a champion. So you do have, you know, so maybe we need to partner more, not only with the academic institutions, to look at the partnership and the concept. That's why even on the human capital, a lot of things, a key pillar for us is the advocacy and comms. You know, communication matters a lot. Communication matters a lot, so people understand. Personally, in my life, from just in my past place of work, having to deploy our actions to SDG from my role, I made personal choices. I have renewable energy. I don't buy seaway. I have a water filtration system. I try to eat healthy. So these are the little ways we can translate it into day-to-day lives and, you know, education through our local champions.
I like the fact that you highlighted that it is not for one entity alone. It goes across board to the individuals themselves to implement change. Well, energy accounts for 3/4 of global greenhouse gas emissions, and yet Nigeria remains heavily reliant on oil and gas. You mentioned about transiting, you know, from, you know, relying on to solar, I believe. Yeah. Well, so what concrete policies exist to ensure that our energy development doesn't worsen the climate that we currently have?
You know, this energy poverty in Africa, over the past months, I've spoken on regional forums on it, and the more I look at the numbers, the more sobering it is. You look at Africa generally, I think we house over 70% of people without access to energy. Even the most basic form of energy, cooking, 4 in 5 Africans are subjected to harmful gases from cooking, clean cooking. And, you know, you look at, you know, the needs and the correlation between energy access and attainment of all these goals. Even though there's a goal on the clean energy, goal 7, SDG 7, but generally you look at, you know, the role of energy in individual lives, in powering SMEs, in powering our industrialization and all these great things Africa seeks to achieve. You see that it's a very important area that should be prioritized and is being prioritized. So like you mentioned, you know, we are a fossil fuel based economy, and, you know, the thing with energy, you try to create an energy strategy that works for you based on your natural capital. Yeah. We're lucky. In fact, when I looked at post-fossil fuel, the renewable minerals, be it solar, we have Africa has 70% of the best form of solar irradiation. Mm. If it's hydro, we do have abundant water bodies. Look at what Ethiopia is doing. You come to Nigeria, most of the power that goes to the grid is from then the gas to power, because we have taken as a country gas as a transition fuel. And then we do have, Nigeria leads on all the policies and the plans. In my own opinion and based on what I've assessed, there's one thing killing Africa and killing us, the cost of capital. Mm. You know, at 30%, and globally competitive, but it's too much. You know, when you look at even the tariffs and so you see a lot of effort being made in attracting. Even yesterday, my principal was at an event where they're trying to attract capital. World Bank and Africa Development Bank have come together to do the Mission 300. And there is a pool of climate finance out there, but it requires bankability, bankable projects, and tapping into innovative funding like carbon credits and so on. But it's a complicated problem that Africa is disadvantaged, and the biggest area impeding technology and finance. And this is where, again, some of the universities need to come in with R&D for homegrown solutions. Because, sorry, let me tell you what Ethiopia has done. Because they know they are a hydro energy-driven nation, they're now net exporters. They've banned combustible engine. From next year, you can only buy hybrid or electric cars because that's a source of energy for them. So they have so much energy now. So that's what they intend to use to power transport, because that's one of the biggest consuming areas of energy.
Okay. Mr. Isibor, let me come to you with this. She's talked about what Ethiopia is doing, and also let's look at Nigeria critically. One huge challenge we have is unemployment, and the government is talking about upscaling, changing the whole narrative, and agri is one key area we can change the narrative if we have that kind of investment. Now, the government creates the policies. It's still the private sector that will take the bull by the horn to invest massively. The way we see investment probably in energy, are we likely to see such private sector investment in agriculture so that we can attain the dream of making agric the next alternative? And what are those incentives you think government can put in place that will help drive in the private sector hugely into this?
Thanks. I think the private sector is, of course, driven by profit and margins. So I think one of the policy areas that government might need to take a look at, of course, are, to attract investments, are the profits, and of course the enabling environment. What are those things that is going to attract the flow of funds? Like Rukaya just mentioned, cost of funds is about 30%. So if that is an investor is going to come into a sector, the first have to look at the minimum entry. What are the barriers? What are the costs? And then look if there's going to be an opportunity for them to get a return on their investment, and of course create impact. And of course we all know that food security is critical to Nigeria because we need to be healthy and we need to be productive as well. So I think the private sector will be willing and interested in putting resources into that, as long as they can identify an end goal and of course enabling policy environment to deliver that.
I'd like to ask, why did ACCA choose Nigeria as a launch base for this initiative, and what was it about scale, need, or strategic influence across the continent? I would like you to help me out.
I think it's everything, to be I think it's everything, to be honest. So, as you know, ACCA is a global organization, and our purpose is to be a force for public good. Yeah, and of course you're aware that Nigeria is the first country that signed on to the UN SDGs, actually, for sustainability reporting. So at ACCA, Nigeria is a critical market in terms of its importance to the organization globally. And we thought that launching it in Nigeria is going to have, the halo impact and, ripple impact across Africa and the world as well. And that's why we're launching it. We also see that Nigerian, there's, a large appetite to understand what sustainability is about. And this initiative is for both private, public school, and we're measuring impact and success of it. You can go to even Sambisa Forest and they talk about SDGs, and as you said, even your mom in the village, how does she relate? And I think it's pretty easy, really, because if our students and our future leaders are well educated, they can come back home and tell grandma, we can't be cutting down trees because it's not good for us. Why don't we use charcoal? Let's try this. And you know, when a child comes back home as well and tells the parent, Mom, Dad, we shouldn't be buying a generator. Why don't we buy, you know, a solar panel, and so that we can generate cleaner, more sustainable energy? I think that is when we say we're succeeding and we're successful. So that is why in Nigeria, because there's going to be a lot of impact if we launch it here.
One key area is that when we talk about data accountability in tracking SDG, we know we are challenged in that aspect. Data sources, it's not too strong. Now, are there institutional reform that our government is putting in place to help ensure transparency and to accurately measure the progress, whether it is by the federal government, by the subnationals, or even by the private sector, so that we know who is doing what at what time and where they are. So as we gravitate towards 2030, we can beat our chest and say, yes, we've been able to do this and this. Next year is election year. 2030 is going to be an election year again. So you know, in Nigerian politics, those years are strategic, a lot of campaign, and you might not have too much work on the government side. So what are those institutional framework you think will be very accurate?
Yes, like you mentioned, data is everything, to be honest. It's what will give you the flashlight to know where we're lagging, not only based on the indicators location-wise, because sometimes you'll see that is a few locations actually doing very badly, that if you tackle that, your performance, and you know, you can see, for example, in health, the Honorable Minister of Health, that's what they use to inform the free cesarean deliveries, because they use the data to look at the maternal mortality rates, and realized a lot of it is because people can't afford that, and so on. And even on the human capital, we're using measures, you know, and we're cascading it down to state by state. And now coming to the SDGs, you know, we have a dedicated aide, the senior special assistant to the president on SDGs for the past 8 years. And you can go online and you see Nigeria's aggregate performance. But like you said, the sources, the areas, the stakeholder category, and you know, being able to cascade and deep dive matters. And I know that, you know, we keep trying to perfect our data systems, informing you know, the planning process. The National Ministry of Economic Planning also has, you know, not only with departments that collect the data, but even an M&E department that work with the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President. At a point, even the spend data was public, you know, with what sort of projects are being funded. So we keep trying to update the national statistics. The states themselves keep, you know, investing to have their state bureaus of statistics as well, so that you're making sure that you're moving with impact, and you're not just doing activities or moving emotion, and you're able to tell, you know, what specific intervention you can do and see some behavioral patterns, you know, understand. That's why I buttressed education, because if there's a correlation between education levels with early pregnancy, stunted children, even the adoption of some healthcare services, and that's why I think that's the silver bullet. And then, but I do see, you know, the data culture keep becoming more advanced and taken by, you know, all the MDAs and government.
Indeed, Madam Rukaya, we can go on and on and on, but unfortunately time is not our friend. We have to leave the conversation here, but we must say thank you so much for your time. Also, Mr. Isibor, it's a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
That's why we'll leave our conversation this morning. We're glad that you could be a part of it. We'll now take you back to Lagos. Ria, over to you.
Thank you so much, Abuja. Quite a timely conversation. Thank you.